Hello and happy Monday to you as you navigate this week again. I hope that God is with you during this week and you find some peace in all the chaos. For today's reflection, I'd like to take a moment and consider a little bit more at length this passage from Philippians that we heard this weekend. And the whole passage, at least most of it, especially that second part, this great Christological hymn, was about the self-emptying of Jesus Christ. And Paul's writing the Philippian community from prison, encouraging them that if they're going to continue to build up his community, they need to take on what Paul says is the same mind of Jesus Christ. And I'll give you a few verses, but please look it up again. It's a very important passage, and it tells us a lot about Christ. And it goes like this: put on the same mind of Christ, who though he was in the form of God, did not deem equality with God something to be grasped at, but rather emptied himself, taking the form of a slave. This self-emptying to the point of crucifixion that Paul goes on to talk about, he's telling us that that's exactly what we're supposed to imitate in the person of Jesus Christ, that's precisely what is needed to be a Christian disciple and therefore to build up community, which is so important in this fragmented world that we live in. Now, hopefully you may have heard me preach on this week, and if not, maybe you saw it on YouTube, but I'd like to go one step further and talk about this idea of spiritual poverty, because I think this is all within the same realm of what Paul's trying to get at in this letter, that we need to reclaim our humanity, that this self-emptying that God has already done for us in the person of Jesus Christ, that we need to imitate for our own sake, personally and as a Christian community. It's only then when communities begin to build up and we begin to reclaim, as I mentioned this weekend, our capacity first for God, which then in turn reclaims our capacity for each other. Matthew's gospel in the Beatitudes sums it up in the very first of all the Beatitudes by saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." That to be Christian is to essentially be poor in spirit, to empty yourself of all these worldly things and to embrace Christ in this most powerful way. And I listed some of these this weekend. I argue that we're so full of this world that we've lost our capacity for God. We've lost our capacity for Jesus Christ. And we always say the world has, but what about us as Christians, as Catholics? Are we reconsidering our own capacity for God, for Jesus Christ? I said it already, we fill up on all these things. We fill up on our own busyness, our own longings for material wealth, our own longing to get ahead, to be something in this world. And then we fill up on all the political garbage that's going on in the world, all these ideologies and this back and forth on social media, and anger and resentment and feuds and taking sides and all these things, and we just eat this stuff up. We indulge on it, and when we think we can't take any more, we go back for seconds and thirds because we are so addicted to this stuff. Well, I think, although I'm taking Paul out of context and maybe even taking Matthew out of context a little bit, that this hymn and Matthew's, and Jesus and Matthew saying, "Blessed are the poor in spirit," are exactly what we need to hear in this time. That we need to self-empty, that we need to reclaim, as I said this weekend, our own capacity for God. Because when we reclaim our capacity for God, our innate capacity for God, then we begin to reclaim our capacity for the other. And that's really what the world needs. Ruth Burroughs says that man is an emptiness that only God can fill. And so if I reclaim this emptiness, and that doesn't sound like a great thing, but it's really reaffirming my capacity for God, then I'm more open to this encounter with Jesus Christ. And I'd like to read this quote by Johann Baptist Metz, who is a great theologian, and he's commenting on this blessed are the poor in spirit. He said, "This poverty, then, is not just another virtue, one among many. It is a necessary ingredient in any authentic Christian attitude toward life. Without it, there can be no Christianity and no imitation of Christ. It is no accident that poverty of spirit is the first of the Beatitudes. What is the sorrow of those who mourn, the suffering of the persecuted, the self-forgetfulness of the merciful, or the humility of the peacemakers? What are these if not variations of spiritual poverty? This spirit is also the mother of the threefold mystery of faith, hope, and charity. It is a doorway through which we must pass to become authentic human beings. Only through poverty of spirit do we draw near to God. Only through it does God draw near to us. Poverty of spirit is a meeting point of heaven and earth, the mysterious place where God and humanity encounter each other, the point where infinite mystery meets concrete existence. Now, there's a lot going on in what Metz is saying there, but the point in all this is that the goal as Christians is not to escape our humanity. I think that's a false notion that penetrates the church. It's to embrace our humanity on the deepest level, because that's exactly what Jesus Christ did. This is what the Philippian hymn that I just quoted a little bit about was, that we heard this weekend, about a God who empties himself to show his complete capacity for us, while we need to empty ourselves to reclaim our capacity for God, our capacity for Jesus Christ. Poverty of spirit is one of the great Christian virtues, and you can call it humility, self-emptying, whatever you want to call it, but it's embracing the fact that as a human being, I am complete capacity for God, and this longing for God to dwell in me, and this radical openness to God, this radical openness to Jesus Christ, and therefore this radical openness to the other. I really think, and I know I'm repeating myself from this weekend, but I really think we need to reclaim this poverty of spirit, to let go of some of this garbage in the world that we fill ourselves up with, and to allow Christ to come in and fill in that emptiness, so that we can have not just the capacity for God, but then therefore this great capacity for the other. This was all given to us in our baptism, and we've just filled it all up over time. It's time to reclaim our baptism, reclaim this capacity for God, and live as joy-filled Christians in pursuit of a peaceful world. May God's love be with you always. I hope you continue to stay safe during this pandemic, and I hope to see you all very soon. God bless.